Imagine a world where the guns of August roared and then Germany emerged victorious. It's a strange thought, isn't it? We're so used to thinking of World War I as a tragic, grinding defeat for the Central Powers. The war that ended empires, redrew borders, and set the world on fire. But what if it hadn't gone that way? What if Germany, the Kaiser's empire, had won the Great War? What if the map of Europe had tilted in the other direction? Let's step into that alternate timeline, not just as historians, but as travelers. Because the story that follows isn't just about battles and treaties. It's about how life would have changed for billions of people. It's about how your country, your family, might have lived in a completely different world. First, we have to answer the big question: how? Germany was close, terrifyingly close, to victory. In 1914, the Schlieffen Plan nearly succeeded. If the German army had moved just a little faster through Belgium, if supply lines had held, if the French hadn't counterattacked at the Marne, the Germans might have taken Paris in weeks. France could have been knocked out of the war in 1914, long before the British dug in. But let's give Germany an even better edge. Let's say the US never entered the war. Maybe Woodrow Wilson remains neutral, or the Zimmermann telegram is never intercepted, or Germany restrains its U-boat attacks. Without American troops and resources, the Allies would have struggled to hold out through 1918. Or more simply, imagine Germany's 1918 spring offensive doesn't falter. They break through the Western Front, force Britain and France to the table, and dictate terms. No Weimar Republic, no Versailles Treaty, no crushing debt. Instead, Germany dictates peace and reshapes Europe in its own image. So what does a German victory look like? The most likely version is something historians call the Middle Europa Plan. Germany wouldn't annex France or Britain. It wouldn't burn London or enslave Paris. But it would redraw Eastern Europe and dominate the continent through a web of puppet states and economic alliances. Poland? Never reborn. Belgium? A client state. The Baltics? Under German protection. Ukraine? Broken off from Russia and turned into a German grain supplier. France would be humiliated. Maybe stripped of Alsace-Lorraine again, forced to pay reparations, possibly even have parts of its colonial empire carved up. The British Empire would still exist, but isolated. Germany, now the master of Europe, would rival Britain's global power. Germany itself would become the leader of a new European order, a kind of proto-European Union, but authoritarian, militaristic, and centered on Berlin instead of Brussels. But the biggest difference? Russia. In our real timeline, the Russian Empire collapsed into revolution, giving birth to the Soviet Union. But in this alternate reality, things go even worse for the Tsar. Germany wins before Lenin ever boards that sealed train car from Switzerland. Or maybe they do send him in, but in this timeline, the Bolsheviks don't seize lasting power. Russia fragments. Ukraine becomes independent under German influence. The Baltics form weak republics or get absorbed into Middle Europa. The Caucasus splits. Germany doesn't just defeat Russia, it dismembers it. There's no USSR, no Cold War, no Iron Curtain, just a broken, scattered Russian landscape ruled by warlords and German-backed strongmen. Now let's zoom in. Let's talk about everyday life. If Germany wins the war, the Kaiser remains on the throne. Germany becomes the dominant power in Europe, and its culture spreads with it. The German language becomes the second most important tongue on the continent, taught in schools from Warsaw to Brussels. German architecture defines new cities rebuilt after the war. German universities lead science, engineering, and philosophy. Berlin becomes the center of modernity, not Paris. But this isn't a utopia. This world is more authoritarian. Germany in 1918 wasn't a democracy. It was a monarchy with a militarized elite. Victory would have validated that system. There's no Weimar Republic, no liberal experimentation. No Bauhaus, no cabaret, no golden 20s. Dissent is crushed more efficiently. Socialists and communists are purged. Nationalist fervor swells. A victorious Germany becomes more conservative, more hierarchical, more rigid. But it's also stable. Without the economic disaster of Versailles, there's no hyperinflation. No depression in the 1920s. The middle class doesn't collapse. And that means no Hitler. Yes, let's talk about that. In this timeline, Adolf Hitler is likely a bitter, forgotten footnote, a failed painter, a wounded veteran, angry at the world but with no platform. The Nazi Party never rises because there's no Weimar chaos to exploit. There's no Treaty of Versailles to rage against. And without the Nazis, There is no Holocaust. 6 million Jews, along with millions of Romani, disabled, and others, they live. European Jewry isn't erased. Eastern Europe retains its rich, diverse Jewish culture. Cities like Warsaw and Vilnius remain centers of Yiddish literature and learning. World War II, it doesn't happen, at least not in the same way. There might still be wars, border skirmishes, revolts, colonial uprisings. But there is no global cataclysm, no Normandy invasion, no atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima. Instead, Germany consolidates. The world simmers, but it never explodes. The colonial world shifts too. France and Britain, weakened by defeat or exhaustion, begin to lose their grip on Africa and Asia earlier than in our timeline. Germany, emboldened by victory, may try to reclaim or expand its own colonial holdings, especially in East Africa. But anti-colonial movements surge. Without World War II redrawing the globe, decolonization takes a different path. Slower in some places, faster in others. India might gain independence later. Vietnam's revolution might never happen. Africa could be partitioned by a different set of powers entirely. The United States, meanwhile, is more isolationist. Without the moral victory of defeating Germany or Japan, America retreats from global leadership. No Marshall Plan, no NATO, no Cold War alliances. Just a powerful, self-focused republic with less appetite for global intervention. Now, let's get speculative. How does technology evolve? Without World War II, there's no Manhattan Project. Nuclear weapons are delayed, perhaps by decades. The space race never launched. Von Braun stays in Germany. There's no NASA, no moon landing in 1969. Maybe the first satellite isn't launched until the 1980s. But in other fields, progress might accelerate. German dominance in engineering could supercharge development in automobiles, rail, and early electronics. German scientists lead breakthroughs in chemistry and physics, maybe even early computing. Culturally, the United States doesn't become the global trendsetter it is today. Hollywood still exists, but Berlin and Vienna produce the dominant films. Jazz struggles to go global. Rock and roll never sweeps the world. American culture is just one flavor in a much more Germanic global mix. Fast forward to today. The world in 2025 looks radically different. Germany remains the anchor of a pan-European economic and military alliance, not unlike the EU, but less democratic. The Kaiser may have been replaced by a constitutional figurehead, or maybe a new technocratic class rules in his name. Russia is a weakened federation, still recovering from a century of fragmentation. China rises more slowly, with less support from a war-weary West. The United States is powerful but inward-looking, a quiet giant, not a global policeman. The Middle East is different too. With no Balfour Declaration and no Holocaust, Israel is never founded. Tensions in the region follow an entirely different course. Oil remains central, but power dynamics shift. And the internet? It still exists, but in a different shape. German tech giants compete with American ones. Language barriers are bigger. Global culture is more fragmented. We live in a multipolar world, one shaped not by two superpowers, but by one victor who never lost. So, what if Germany won World War I? The world would be more German, more authoritarian, more centralized, but also possibly more stable. Without the trauma of Versailles, without Hitler, without a Second World War, the 20th century becomes less explosive, but no less complex. Some horrors are avoided, others are born. History doesn't give us clean trade-offs. It gives us questions, possibilities, roads not taken. In our timeline, Germany lost. The world was shattered and rebuilt. But in that other timeline, the one where Berlin triumphed, the world became something else entirely. Would it have been better or just different? That's for you to decide. This is Epic Explorations, where history gets reimagined one twist at a time. Subscribe for more immersive alternate realities, and let us know in the comments. What would you explore next?